Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It is 8 minutes after 6 o'clock. We continue. Hour number 4 of the Matt Murphy Radio Show starts right now. We'll get back to Thomas momentarily. Tim, we'll get to you as well. A number of conversational topics that we'll bring up this hour to include Jeffrey Epstein, a criminal probe into John Brennan and James Comey. Let's see, an 8-1 decision, Supreme Court decision yesterday with the lone dissenting voice being Ketanji Brown Jackson, who apparently remains an unimpressive and unqualified dolt. And then there's the big debate, conch, that is continuing to go on. Several of you on the Super Text line, and thank you all for being regular listeners and being there with us. We appreciate you. We'll try to get you home safe and sound. Jay Harper's got the traffic. He's got the news. He's got everything but, my blathering. Cameron Smith is here. He does not blather. He speaks. He opines in a pithy fashion.
I do my best.
And Jackson controls the entire experience. So there you go. But I thank you. Those who were listening yesterday around this time wanted a Kathy update. Kathy called yesterday and said that she was meeting with Afton Ben this morning and wanted some advice as to how to tackle this issue of immigration with Afton. I offered that advice, and I've not heard from Kathy about how the get-together went. I'm very excited to hear. But I'm also here to tell you that I have been in communique with Afton Ben myself. And so the possibility exists that Afton and I might have a coffee here in the near future.
She doesn't seem super afraid.
No, and I'm appreciative of that.
I respect that.
I mean, that's fine. She's been on my show a couple of times when I was on in the midday. She has not responded to my several requests for her to come on in the afternoon. But now that she's running for the 7th Congressional District as a Democrat, now that Mark Green has stepped down, maybe she will be more willing to step forward. And
I just don't think she's going to win that.
Yeah, so I was a bit confused, and I just want an update. I did not get in contact with Trey Hargett as promised, the Secretary of State, but I am less confused today because I didn't know with this special election, I was a little concerned that Democrats and Republicans would all be in the same pool. And then the Republicans would split the votes, but that's not how it works. There will be a primary, and then the two winners out of the primaries, and it's a kind of most votes win, so you don't have to have a majority. You just have to have the most, and then whoever has the most out of the Democrats and the most out of the Republicans, they'll face off.
Well, this was the Andy Ogles thing. Like this was where Andy had the primary that first round that there were just not very many votes in.
Mm-hmm. Right. But this special is going to be like boom, 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 bim, bang, boom. We'll have somebody by October, I think.
I mean, she's likable. The numbers do not favor a Democrat.
Well, it's funny because she is a likable person, but I have found that she has become increasingly pushy.
Yep.
Over the last 6 months. And as she we were just listening to a campaign ad that she put out on Instagram, and the third word out of her mouth was BS. She called, instead of the big, beautiful bill, she calls it the big BS bill. And she says BS, which I guess if the president says it.
Yeah, that was my word.
I, by the way, would remind you that we have a podcast available for your perusal called All the Best Words with Cameron Smith and Matt Murphy. And I happen to know that the next dropped podcast will include the word BS, but it's the word. And it's not even my word.
The president said it so you can say it. That's what I'm going to tell my mom.
Well, I guess so. But the more pushy she becomes or the more aggressive she becomes, I wonder if that's going to be off-putting to some people that are maybe not paying as much attention.
This is the problem of liberal tolerance. It's like, I'm totally fine and affable and tolerant until you disagree with me, and then guess what?
It is one of my favorite political quotes. And I know I always mangle it because I never actually look up the specific verbiage, but it was William F. Buckley who said, liberals are groups of people who gather together and applaud themselves as to how tolerant they are of others' viewpoints, and then they are shocked and dismayed to learn that there are any.
Yeah.
Right?
It's true.
I mean, it's true. So we'll try to get Afton on and to talk about Medicaid. I mean, I can't get Gloria. I mean, I got $3,600 bounty for Gloria Johnson to come on. I can't get her to come on. So maybe I'll get Afton for free.
What's she going to run for?
She's running for nothing, but Gloria was, she basically called all Trump supporters of Nazism. said that
as you do,
an illegal alien detention center is basically a concentration camp. Not even basically, is a concentration camp. That the supporters of the big beautiful bill support grandma dying and people losing their health coverage, and she went after Tim Burchett, who I guess is her congressman in Knoxville. So I invited Gloria and Tim to come on the show and talk about Medicaid and to give Tim's perspective and Gloria's perspective. And Tim has accepted and Gloria has not. And so to kind of up the bounty, if you will, I offered $1,000 to a non-political charity of Gloria's choosing if she will come on the show. All she has to do is appear for an hour.
Good on you.
And now that total, we've gotten so many other donations, and I'm just keeping tally of the donations. If you pledge, remember that you pledged, but we're up to $3,600. So $3,600, Gloria, to a charity, non-political charity of your choosing. All you have to do is show up and be on the show for an hour.
Well, for a member of the Tennessee Three, you've got to get just a big audience. I mean, the money's just not persuasive. You got to get her people on. She's historic. You remember that, right?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And she only, the other two got the boot, and she did not. And she immediately said she didn't get the boot because all of her colleagues were racist.
Because of racism.
It's classic. Let's get back to Thomas. And Thomas is a medical doctor, and he's explaining the Medicare procedures for us. And Thomas, it is a great explanation that you're offering us. And I'm curious, how this relates to these third-party supplementals with Mark calling in and frustrating about this supplemental that he had. Just take the floor from us, Thomas.
Well, as I said, you have to understand initially that reimbursements are mandated by the federal government.
All right, we understand that.
Hospitals are required to participate in Medicare, standard Medicare. Medicare Advantage plans are replacement plans for Medicare. Patients that sign up for these almost always don't know that they are signing up for these. They think they are signing up for supplemental insurance rather than something that replaces their Medicare.
Sure.
And that's the way it is marketed. Now, Medicare Advantage plans have the right to negotiate with hospitals and with physicians to determine what they are going to reimburse for services. So they function as health maintenance organizations for the most part. You can only see a participating provider, which is different from a PPO where you can see people outside the PPO, but they don't pay them very much. In a health maintenance organization, you can only see people that have agreed to participate in the health maintenance organization. An entity like Vanderbilt, being the size that it is and being a tertiary referral center, frequently decides not to participate in certain insurance plans because they don't get reimbursed enough. And they've got more patients than they can see, so they're not going to work for less than they have to. Now, your caller unknowingly signed up for a Medicare replacement.
Right. That's what it seems like, yeah.
Unless the Trump administration has recently changed something that I don't know about. There is an enrollment period for Medicare. It is about 4 weeks, and I think it is in November. Could be late October. During that period of time, people get inundated with mailers, with phone calls from marketers. That is the only time you can change your plan.
So the probability
year where you can get in or out. So Can he get out now? No, he cannot. Now, are they going to explain to him? Well, no, because
they want to keep him in.
That upsets people.
Yeah.
And they're going to do everything they can to talk him into staying in, but they don't really have to do that until October, November.
Right.
So, like I said, there's a very I can explain Medicare in detail, but it would take me several hours.
Well, we don't have several hours, Doc, and I don't have the gravitas on the radio to do that. Thank you for the call. I'm sorry to cut you short, but we simply have to move along. You've been a wealth of information, a fountain of information, and I deeply appreciate it. Tim will finish the subject with you. Hello, Tim. How are you?
This is Jim.
T-I-M?
Jim, J-I-M.
Oh, J-I-M. Well, my apologies. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Matt, thanks for getting me on. The doctor was pretty accurate on everything. I don't get into billing. I've been a Medicare patient for 14 years, and I've changed my wellness. I've changed 3 times. And anybody that says the Medicare Advantage program is a scam, it's sold to you as something it's not, that's a lie. Your agent tells you what your options are, and you choose what you want. I got on Medicare Advantage when me and my wife were 70. We were paying for a supplement. A guy that had been in insurance all his life I played golf with told me that I was stupid to have a supplement to take the Medicare Advantage. My wife and I have saved $40,000 since we've been on the Advantage program. So I recommend it to anyone.
Well, but do you also recognize, Jim, and I'm not discounting your personal experience, but you also recognize that others might have a different experience.
Well, I agree, but I'm telling you.
Well, why would you call them liars?
No, I didn't call them liars.
Yeah, you did. You said anybody that says that someone does this under false pretenses or is a lie. I mean, that's what you said.
Well, maybe I did, but
Okay.
it's not a scam. It's your agent explains to you what your options are, and you pick. And you have beginning in October till I think December, the first week of December, to change or to select your Medicare program. And obviously, Mark selected one. He might have done it unknowingly. I find that hard to believe. But you select your program, and you're on it, again, like the doctor said, until the year's out.
You mind if I ask you a personal question?
Yes, sir.
Do you use a lot of healthcare services?
I had open heart surgery.
That's a pretty significant one. Because where we noticed the big difference between the Medicare Advantage and the traditional Medicare was when my grandfather had dementia. And so that's one of where the difference to them was pretty significant. And then my grandmother had significant health care costs at the end of her life. And so I'm not arguing necessarily on the front end side, but in terms of what the plan pays out with big issues, I think that's part of what we're talking about is different plans may pay different way for different services. So, depending on what your issue is, that can determine how it hits you on the pocketbook.
Not necessarily a scam on the front end, but it feels that way on the back end.
Well, again, I look at the total cost that I'm going to be out. If I go into the hospital, I'm out. It's either $300 or $500 for 5 days. All right, and if I go back in a month later for the same thing, then I don't have to pay anything. So I'm not. Everything's not paid. Whereas if I have a supplement, everything is paid. The problem is your supplement goes up and up and up. My wife and I right now, we're 78. We'd be paying about probably counting a drug plan and everything, $600 a month for the supplement and the drug plan. Under Medicare Advantage, I don't pay anything. I pay $35 when I see a specialist, $15 when I see a regular doctor. To me, it's a real savings to me and my wife, and we've been in the hospital 3 times since we've had this program. But overall, we calculated our savings in the last 8 years has been around $40,000 for being on the Advantage program.
No, and I'm glad for you and your wife. It's working well for you. I mean, obviously, Mark has had a different experience, and thank you for the call, Jim, and the explainer. Mark wants to get out. What I'm hearing is that there's probably a time window by which Mark can do that. Mark, I would encourage you to call Cover Nash and see what Shane would tell you. Probably going to tell you about that time window, but there it is. 22 after the hour, an update on wasted bacon. Plus, we'll get Cameron's take on everything from shoes at the airport to chickens in Chattanooga. That's on the way next on Super Talk. Thank you much, Jay Harper, and for Ken Weaver today. 3347 says, you missed what the last caller was saying. He said that anyone who says that Medicare Advantage program is a scam is a liar. He's correct. It's not a scam. It's a very good program. My point was this, and if that is the case, then so be it. I stand corrected. But I do believe that there are occasions where individuals are being sold on these Advantage programs, and they do not know what they're being sold on, and the people on the other end of the phone know that.
Well, sadly, it's a level of competency. I mean, nobody really wants to say that, but as people get old, they have varying levels of competency.
My grandfather had no idea that he was a part of the Medicare Advantage program, and he was very frustrated because he was conditioned to call Medicare, and Medicare told him, you can't call us anymore, and he was very frustrated because he did not know what was going on. That's the only point that I'm making.
Yeah. It's a fair one to make.
Yeah, sure. Where are you on chickens in Chattanooga? You want to hear the story?
Yeah, I do.
So the basics of the story are simple. In the city of Chattanooga, you may have chickens on your property as long as you have more than 2 acres of property, 2 or more acres. The city wants to eliminate that restriction, and there is much debate about whether or not that is appropriate. In other words, no matter how much property you have at your house, you can have a chicken coop.
Okay.
Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Even if it's very at the bare minimum, like quarter of an acre?
Right. So actually, in our neighborhood in Nolensville, this is an issue because our HOA rules say you can't have any farm animals, and that includes chickens. Because you don't want that people having roosters and waking everybody up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
But my take on it is, as long as it's not disturbing the neighbors in an HOA, like where you're close together, fine. But beyond that, do what you want.
You know, I kind of compromised on it because I was right there with you. I was having a conversation with our mutual friend Dale Jackson in Chattanooga about this, and they've had much conversation about it. And he's like, no, you shouldn't be able to have chickens in, tight-knit neighborhoods. And I was like, I don't have a problem with it. Maybe if you want to keep a rooster restriction because that becomes a noise complaint issue. If individual HOAs want to make up their own rules, that's their own business. But you know what? A compromise position might be I think a 2-acre restriction is ridiculous. I think, it'd be much more fair to say, okay, let's make it a 1/2 acre.
I mean, I've got.
But I default to freedom.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of where I am. If you want the neighborhood to make a rule, let them do it. You should not have any other government rules about who can have chickens.
At the same time, Jackson's point was, you live in a house and your neighbor moves in next door and you have very, very tight quarters. I mean, I call them ant farm neighborhoods where it's just, the houses are right next to one another.
Right.
And then here come the chickens with, there's not, chickens don't have the smell of goats, but, there is something that comes along
What
with
next?
livestock.
We're going to have goat regs?
Raccoon regulations.
Jeez, we were trying to fix that.
You and I better get on the schneid right now on the raccoon front.
Yeah, that's true. We need a pre-filed bill. We got to do that.
Now we got to find a legislator that looks at us with a straight face and doesn't start laughing when we make the pitch.
Yeah, I'm just asking for the same law in Tennessee that's in Arkansas. That's all.
I mean, goodness gracious.
Allow me to own 6 raccoons that I catch by hand.
Doesn't seem to be too much to
Obviously.
ask. It is 31 after the hour on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It is 20 until 7. We'll hand off to Mark Levin, the great one. My name is Matt Murphy. They call me the king of the osteophytes. Well, okay, I take that back. My name is Matt Murphy. I call me the king of the osteophytes. Cameron Smith is along as well. There's Jackson behind the glass, Jay Harper behind him. The gang's all here, and we thank you for being here as well. My grammar Nazi has weighed in on she's an English teacher, and she was actually agreeing with me. I should not call her a grammar Nazi. She was agreeing with me on the conch thing.
Red coat.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Had a bloody monarchy to run. So English teacher here, if I have 0.5 acres or more, the government or the HOA should have no control over how I use my land. I'm paying my taxes. Furthermore, as a disabled person, I use my 1.5 acres to grow my own food, so I don't have to complain about Medicare cuts. I'm trying to be self-sufficient, even though I can only work for 20 or 30 minutes before getting tired. Now, I agree that less interference through the government is more. I don't zoning is there for a reason. I don't want to move into a place and invest a lot of time, energy, and money into my residential property and have a hog farm, a commercial hog farm pop up next door.
Those are gross.
Right?
They are.
So I understand zoning, but I also understand if you want to have 5 or 6 chickens on your residence, I don't want the government interfering in the way that you want to live your life. So I'm all in favor of that.
Yeah, and we have this all the time in Nolensville because Nolensville, when I grew up in this area, was basically past the dump on Sunset. Like, there's nothing out there. The cows didn't even go that far.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're booming and going and growing and getting big. And people are like, well, we need to regulate and stop people from coming in and developing. I'm like, well, who stopped you?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, let's be a little consistent here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know you like your house in this pastoral setting, but to tell the remaining farmers, sorry, you didn't get on this early enough.
Right.
Now we've got
you don't get to sell your farm.
Right. We get to look at your farm. Like, come on.
Well, and as far as HOA goes, I've had my past experiences with HOA, and anybody that's listened to this radio show for any length of time, you probably can figure out how that went. I would not move into a neighborhood with an HOA. Well, let me put it a different way. I would obviously read the HOA and make sure that it's something that I could live with, and it better damn well be a pretty light touch. In other words, hey, Murph, we're going to need, $100 a year for maintenance of the front.
Yeah. I mean, I've got one right now. And the reason I'm involved with the HOA is because, I've got some neighbors, not a lot of them, but some neighbors that are like, well, I want to come with a ruler and check out your grass. And I'm like, look, the management company can handle that, but like, that's not being a great neighbor when you run around and do that kind of stuff. And I don't like that.
Yeah, you're not going to get a good response from me. We sold our house in Helena.
Mm-hmm.
And just real quick, we sold our house in Helena, and our plan was to find property and build on it. And between the time that we sold the house and the building, we knew we needed about a year of a rental. And so we moved into a rental property and ultimately did not build because Nashville happened, but moved into the rental property and, had just moved, had been there 2 days and took 2 trash cans out to the road. I wasn't quite sure when the trash came and went.
Ooh.
And we got a note, second day in, got a note attacked to our front door with no name, no telephone number, no anything, explaining to us the rules of the neighborhood. And it just snide and condescending, like, they knew we were renters somehow. As renters, you may not understand how HOA were. Oh my God, it flew all over me. So that was the content of my radio show for the next
never
HOA
again.
Karen. Flies all over me. What, I don't want to dive too deep into it because it's been talked to death. I feel that way. But I'm curious your thought on the Epstein stuff.
Yeah. You said transparency. You said you were going to come in. We're going to have transparency on this, the Kennedy files, all that sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, why are you even talking about it anymore? Like, this is weird.
I thought the Trump response was a bad look for him yesterday. And the only logical conclusion that I can come to, because I don't believe the conspiracy that the Mossad runs our American government. I don't think AIPAC runs our American government. It doesn't. But the only logical conclusion that I can come to is that there are some level of intelligence assets involved in some or all of this that they feel like it is better, because what they're doing is just playing the delay game. They feel like if they just shut it down, that those that are demanding it will eventually just stop talking about it.
Yeah. The problem for me in all this is I think it's more likely folks like Jeffrey Epstein, they play both sides, right? They have friends on the right and friends on the left. Mm-hmm. And when we started hearing some of the names that this guy has been involved with, we're like, hey, the idea that people can do illegal things because they're rich and powerful
is disgusting.
Doesn't settle well with us, especially when it involves like underage kids. Like, that's gross. And we need to get to the bottom of it and see who else was involved here in doing criminal things.
Well, and I'll give you this as a final thought. One thing that bugs me more than anything, the same people that are telling us that there's no there, the same people that are happy to explain to us, hey, we looked into this, and you know what? He killed himself. And, all these files that everybody's been talking about, they don't really exist, and there's no information. And there truly are no third parties that we could possibly hold to account. I just want to flash back just real quick to this. This is Glenn Beck.
Black Book. FBI.
Talking to Cash Patel.
But
who has the Black Book?
That is,
that's under direct control of the director of the FBI. Just like the manifesto from the Nashville school shooting of the Catholic school. We still haven't seen that, right? It's not the Nashville police or PD saying we don't want this out. The FBI airmailed into that operation and said this is not getting out.
So I play that clip to say Cash Patel last year, Glenn Beck asked him, who has the Epstein's Black Book? FBI. Wait, but who? Director of the FBI. Cameron, I'll ask you, who's currently the director of the FBI?
Cash Patel.
Right. Now he says that book doesn't exist. So for me to be comfortable, you owe it to the people through transparency to step up to a podium and say, I spouted off at the mouth a lot last year about crap that I didn't know about. And I said that I knew things that I didn't know then, and I'm sorry.
Yes.
But you don't do that. You just say, no, the Black Book doesn't exist. Well, you sure as hell believed it existed a year ago.
What's funnier is Dan Bongino was also doing it. They were both very much like, hey, we know this. We know where it is. We know what's going on.
We know exactly. And they sold their listeners a load of absolute garbage based on what they're saying today. Dan Bongino today, and I know a lot of y'all love him, today he is basically saying that Dan Bongino of a year ago was full of bull squeeze.
Yes. And I think that's actually probably true, right?
I do too.
But no, you're not going to get the apology like, yeah, we were saying it. We got a little excited. We got in here. I think most of the time on conspiracy stuff, I don't weigh in on any of that. I'm like, that's dumb. But on this one, when you see rich and powerful people covering for rich and powerful people, it sends up smoke signals for everybody. And so my point is, all I want you to tell, I don't know whether he committed suicide or somebody offed him, like, okay, that's one thing. But my bigger thing is, you're telling me you got to the bottom of this and the only criminal charges that are brought have already been handled. Really?
With Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein himself.
And Epstein.
So all of the trafficking of all of the girls that they were taking to this island were for Epstein.
Yeah.
Nobody
believes that.
Nobody believes it.
And my point is, because these guys play both sides, my concern is there are friendlies that are implicated here that have done not good things, or at a minimum, things that would look really bad. They're like, nah, let's see if we can just kind of submarine this.
On another front, Donald Trump has kind of pivoted on an issue that you and I were talking about a little while ago on the podcast, and that is the issue of Ukraine and Russia. I don't consider what's happening a flip-flop. Maybe some do.
You can call it if you want it, but I mean, he's changed his position.
I think he's changing positions based on the response that he's getting from Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, and this for me is interesting because I've said all along, Vladimir Putin's not acting in good faith. He wants to get the gang back together. He wants the Soviet bloc back together. He's not content with establishing the lines that were there before he attacked Ukraine. Like, come on. Trump, look, we have a different approach. But Trump said, we can do this the easy way, and I'm going to kind of give you an out. I'm going to give you a way to save face and say, you're not the bad guy. They're not the good guy. This is just a difference. And that's where people like to me. I'm like, no, he's definitely the bad guy. But this is Trump in diplomacy. He's trying to be nice with this guy to get him to do the thing.
Sweeten him up, and you get the best deal possible.
And he didn't. So, now he's going to, I think, what looks like, this is going to go poorly for Putin. And just seeing what happened with Iran, Trump's not afraid to do controversial things to accomplish foreign policy objectives. We just saw that. And the fact that Putin has no interest in negotiating here or coming to the table, I think it's a misplay by Putin. And I don't think it's going to go well.
Well, I like the idea that Trump is demonstrating a willingness to be nimble, a willingness to move on an issue. And he took a lot of holy hell at the beginning of the administration because he didn't play the black hat, white hat game.
Yes, and I was somebody that gave it to him. I'm like,
Right.
This isn't a close call.
You know, and I felt like at the time, and I'm not playing Murphy was right here, but I felt like at the time, well, you're going to get a lot closer to a better deal if you treat Putin nicely. Well, he did that. He tried that, and apparently it has not gone well, in as much as Putin doesn't seem to be interested in achieving peace.
And I'm going to give Trump the benefit of the doubt here and say he genuinely thought, hey, if I give this guy away to save face and say Ukraine's not part of the UN, you get this Donbass and Crimea region, and we call it a day, right? That he genuinely thought he could sell that deal really quickly, and then this is over,
Right.
and we're basically back at status quo. That clearly has not been the case. He's visibly frustrated. The fact that he's calling it BS and
saying the word.
I'm talking to this guy, and he's just blowing smoke up my butt. I think that this is either Trump has to get aggressive with Putin here, or Putin just looks like the winner and saying, hey, I just told you to go pound sand, and you did.
And through it all, I will say, and my entire goal is not to just applaud and laud Donald Trump for these things, but it has become increasingly clear that what he has said from the beginning is true. His desire is to stop the war and stop the killing.
Sure.
And everything else is negotiable with regard to how we accomplish that. Even some of the non-negotiables that people want to, everything's on the table for Trump.
And it's my job to, as a pundit, to speak with clarity on, hey, Russia's clearly the aggressor here. They started this thing. That's what I'm supposed to say. But, in retrospect, looking at it, I need to be honest, too, that, his job is, he's the president of the United States.
And if he wants to act as mediator,
he's got to be diplomatic.
Both parties need to feel like at least he's going to be fair-minded.
I can't be very diplomatic with Vladimir Putin by saying, hey, you're a jackbooted thug, right? That's not going to work.
53 after the hour. Wrap it up in a moment on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Here's a spot of good news for those of you just about to get home. Perhaps you're already there. You might have heard by now that the TSA, that would be the Transportation Security Administration, is no longer requiring the removal of shoes at our airports across the United States of America. Cameron, what say you?
If we have a terrorist attack that's based on a shoe after this, good grief.
But we're not going to.
Don't you feel so much safer that the TSA's there?
I don't understand why that little zippy machine that I have to raise my arms for, why can't that handle the shoe situation from the beginning? I assume
we could tell you, but we'd have to kill you.
I assume.
What's
in the small of your back? I'm just hot and sweaty back there. I'm sorry.
They will always catch my aerosol sunscreen, but I've literally had bullet casings accidentally in my bag, and that gets right through.
My new shoulder, I asked questions about what's going to happen at the airport with my new shoulder. You know what they said?
What?
Everybody has said, just tell them you have a new replacement shoulder. You'll be fine. I was like, well, that doesn't sound very safe. But more on weight. Do not speak on any other issue before we talk about Wasted Bacon next week, okay?
Fine.
Good gracious.
We're getting it done.
Out of time. Wasted Bacon, the album is about to drop.
It is.
Coming up later on in the month. We'll tell you about it next time. It's time for Mark Levin. So long, everybody.